Let's use Dana White as an example.
Okay.
Because, the reason why I came across your work is because of a clip that, involved Dana White. And I'm sure I know you get this a lot because I've seen you be asked about this in interviews. But for context for anybody listening, I don't know where I was no, I know what happened. My friend sent into a WhatsApp group a clip of Dana White talking about you. And that's the clip that made me go down the rabbit hole.
Oh.
I watched that clip. I then did some research. I then watched a series of videos of you online talking about health. And I watched you asking audience members to stand up and name the health issue they were suffering. And you on the spot told them what was missing from their life, their diet, whatever it might have been. You kind of diagnosed them in a way of, and then I reached out to you on Instagram and that's why you were here. But if we go back to the start of that, it was that story that Dana White told that had me so compelled to reach out to you. For anybody that doesn't know, and there will be some people that don't know, Dana White is the president of the UFC, which is the big fighting tournament where everybody kicks each other's heads in. So what's your take on the Dana White story?
So Dana White is an example. I mean, he's just a celebrity example, but he is a shining example of the vast number of people, men and women in his age category that have given up on the capacity to thrive. They've accepted that they have hypothyroid, hypertension, they wake up sore and achy in the mornings, that they don't have a response to exercise, they have a little bit of spare tire, they're brain foggy, they're on 3 or 4 medications. In his case, he was on 7 medications at the time, 3 of which were for blood pressure. He was on, I think a thyroid medication. He was also on. He's been very public about this, by the way. And again, I have to say, I'm not licensed to practice medicine, so it was my clinical team that came up with the diagnosis, and I communicated it to Dana. I do train physicians to read blood work and genetic testing, but I can't practice medicine. But the point is that when I met Dana, all he wanted to do was for me to predict his life expectancy. And I hadn't done that in almost 7 years. I left that industry for a reason. I don't do it anymore. The test that I do does not predict life expectancy. The genetic test and the blood work that I do will not tell you how long you're going to live. I have no interest in predicting death anymore. I only have an interest in extending life. And, when Dana was only interested in me predicting his death, so I said, okay, for Dana White, I'll come out, I'll meet with you. I'll do a blood test on you, a gene test on you. I'll pull all your medical records and I'll give you your life expectancy. But what I did was we went out and got his blood work and his gene test. And I was actually in bed at 1:30 in the morning when the lab was running his blood work. And I've had 7 life-threatening alert calls in the middle of the night, because when you drop blood work off at the lab runs it through the night. If they find a life-threatening alert, they call the account holder, right? So I owned the company, I was on the account. So LabCorp calls us at 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning, says, hey, we have a life-threatening alert on a patient. I was like, whoa, what's the patient's name? They said, last name's White. I said, Dana White? And they said, yeah. And I go, wow, what's the life-threatening alert? And they said, triglycerides are almost 800. Now, triglycerides is a measure of blood fat. Okay, it shouldn't be above 149. At 200 or 300, this is a cataclysmic level in the blood, especially in a fasted state. Okay, we pulled his blood in a fasted state. They weren't 400, they weren't 500, they weren't 600, they weren't 700, they were like 768. So they were, this is an enormous number. And so I said, okay, I need to get the blood work over to the, to the doctor. And when they sent the blood work into the portal, I then saw that he was insulin resistant. He was hyperinsulinemic. He was pre-diabetic. He had skyrocketing levels of cholesterol. He was hypertriglyceridemic. He was hyper homocysteinemic. This homocysteine that I told you elevates and causes the blood vessels to constrict. He had all of these conditions. I literally at that moment booked a flight for 7:30 or 8:30 in the morning to head out and see him. And because I said I need to go see him in person. And I remember, I think his assistant called me and I was at the airport and she said, hey, Dana wants to know if his life expectancy's in. I go, well, I'm on my way to see him, and she goes, oh God, is it like that? I said, yeah, it's like that. And so I flew out to see him and I sat down with Dana. And when we talked about the blood work. I didn't even explain the levels. I explained the symptom. I did not know that he was on a CPAP machine, but I said, I am surprised that you can actually sleep through the night, because he was so hypoxic, red blood cell count, hemoglobin levels. I'm surprised you can even sleep through the night without like just waking up, choking, gagging. He's like, dude, I'm on a CPAP machine. I wake up every night. I throw up in the middle of the night. I throw up so much I'm losing my voice. And I said, this level of claudication, triglycerides in the bloodstream, I'm surprised you can even bend down and tie your shoes. That's not painful to tie your shoes. Not that it's not restrictive to tie your shoes. It's not painful. Like, it doesn't feel like the skin's going to peel off your legs. And he went, what the fuck? I mean, he slammed his hand down. He was like, how did you know that? And I said, Dana, your level of brain fog and fatigue right now has got to be at a crushing level of fatigue. I don't know how. The only thing getting you through the day is your own stubborn willpower. And I'm surprised you can remember anything from 1 minute to the next. And his whole staff was like, dude, he's so forgetful. He passes out in meetings. He's sleeping in the planes. He's gagging, snoring. These were not things I necessarily knew about him. So I began to describe all the outcomes of these kinds of conditions. And I said, look, if you don't do what we're going to ask you to do for the next 10 weeks, based on this blood work and the medical records that we pulled for the previous 10 years and the demographic data we pulled for 10 years, you have a life expectancy of 10.4 years. For a 52-year-old man to realize that he's not going to make it out of his 60s, a big realization. And he flicked a switch, a level of discipline that, I haven't seen in a patient in a long time. He goes, dude, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. So we wrote a prescription ketogenic diet. I'm a fan of the keto diet. I don't think everybody needs to be on the keto diet, but by prescription ketogenic diet, we wrote a keto diet right down to the grocery list, keto reset diet. And I said, if it's not on here, you can't eat it, Dana. This is your grocery list. You go to the store, you buy this. You send your chef to the store to buy this. You make this. If it's not this recipe, if it's not on here, you literally can't eat it. Your only leeway is water and the supplements. And we started a process of balancing hormones, controlling his glycemic index, of using amino acids to bring down his level of homocysteine, to actually try to fix the insulin resistance, to reduce his triglycerides. And in 10 weeks, he had such a material change in his blood work. I forget how much weight he had lost. I think he had lost almost 28 or 30 pounds at the time. Yeah. He's over 40 pounds now. By the end of the 5th month, he was completely off of every prescription medication he was on. He's down 44 pounds. He lost he's no longer using the CPAP machine. He no longer is pre-diabetic. He no longer has insulin resistance. He no longer has life-threatening levels of triglyceride. In fact, they're normal. His kidney function improved. His liver function improved. His immune system strengthened. He feels like a 35-year-old man again. His skin tone all improved. His blood pressure returned to normal. He's not on any blood pressure medication. So his blood pressure returned to normal, and he was like, dude, I had no idea I could feel this good. I feel freaking amazing.
And his life expectancy?
Almost tripled.
Almost tripled?
Almost tripled. Just under 30 years.